We're in Chapter 9 of Echo. While Papa fixed the shed door on Sunday, Ivy painted over the words on the back door of the Yamamoto's house and tried not to think about spies. Papa had said the Yamamoto's future was tied to their family's future. So if someone proved the Yamamoto's were spies, Papa would be out of work and they would have to move again. Maybe to some place not nearly as bright with possibilities, like being in an orchestra or owning a house. Later, as she laid out her clothes for school, spies kept popping into her mind. What did spies wear? Black clothes? Or did they dress like regular people during the day and save their spy clothes for nighttime when they did their spy work? Would black clothes be evidence? Ivy slept fitfully and woke much too early on Monday morning, but she wasn't nearly as nervous as she was on other first days of school. At least she wouldn't have to worry about finding her way around, or where to sit at lunch, or who she might play with at recess. Susan would be there. Mama walked with Ivy to the end of the drive and waited until the school bus wheezed to a stop. Ivy kissed her goodbye and climbed up the steps. Susan stood grinning and waved her over to her seat. Ivy scooted down the aisle and slid in next to her. "Hi," said Susan, squeezing Ivy's hand. "Are you nervous?" "Excited," she said, "and glad we're together." As the bus rumbled down the back roads, picking up more students, Ivy and Susan talked about how they would turn the wagon into a clubhouse instead of a fort. Finally, the bus stopped in front of Lincoln Elementary. Some of the students stood to get off, but Ivy noticed that others stayed seated. She stood as Susan scooted past her down the aisle. Ivy followed. At the front of the bus, the driver allowed Susan to pass, then put his arm in front of Ivy. "Young lady, where are you going?" Susan spun around and looked at Ivy, her eyes big with surprise. And then a seed of understanding bloomed on her face. She turned to the bus driver. "Oh, she's just moving to the front of the bus. Right, Ivy?" She tilted her head toward the front seat, indicating where Ivy should sit. "Save me a place on the way home, okay? The bus picks up at your school first, so you'll get on before me." Susan hurried down the steps, waving and casting a worried glance back at Ivy. Your school? What was Susan saying? The bus driver shut the doors. "Wait," called Ivy, turning to him. "I'm in 5th grade at Lincoln." The bus driver picked up a clipboard and studied it. "Ivy Lopez?" "Yes. This is Lincoln, Maine. You go to Lincoln Annex, the Americanization school. Next stop." Americanization? What did that mean? Ivy was already American. The driver put the bus in gear and it lurched forward. Ivy stumbled into the front seat. As the bus pulled away, a group of boys on the steps of Lincoln, Maine waved and sang, "Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O." Ivy felt her chest grow tight. This had to be a mistake. She turned to look at the other leftover students. They didn't seem concerned one bit that the bus was leaving. They talked and laughed with one another as if nothing odd had happened. Several miles later, the driver stopped the bus and opened the doors. He called, "Lincoln Annex!" Out the window, Ivy saw a long, squat building with a tin corrugated roof in the middle of a dirt field. There were no flower beds, no geraniums or roses, no palm trees. This was her school? It looked like a warehouse for farm equipment. That's when Ivy finally noticed that all the students on the bus and milling in front of the school looked the same. Brown-eyed, dark-haired, and olive-skinned like her. A boy from the back of the bus stopped next to Ivy and motioned toward the door, smiling. Without a word, Ivy slid from her seat and climbed down. She stood in the walkway staring at the school as students and parents flooded around her. The boy came up beside her. "I'm Ignacio. First day? From where?" "Fresno," said Ivy, still confused. "So, you didn't know there were 2 schools?" She shook her head and looked down, feeling her face flush with embarrassment. "What grade are you in?" "5th," said Ivy. "I'm in 6th. You'll like your teacher, Miss Carmelo. I was in her class last year. That is, you'll like her if you're a good student." Ivy stood a little taller. "I had the best grades in my entire class at my other school." Ignacio puffed his chest. And I'm the fastest runner in 3 counties. I hold the school track record. I have medals and everything. Ivy crossed her arms. I was going to perform on the radio. He laughed. Come on, radio star. I'll show you your room. And in case you are wondering, yes, it's as bad as it looks. But we can go to Lincoln, Maine after school if we're in sports or music. She followed him inside. But I'm already American, and I already speak English. Me too. But then, why are we here? He shrugged and pointed to the end of the hall. Room 16, see you around. Ivy glanced into each classroom until she came to her own. Miss Carmelo, a wisp of a woman with a black bun on her head, greeted Ivy and found a desk for her next to the windows. Ignacio was right. She was nice. But she didn't let students work ahead. All morning in every subject, Ivy finished before the others and sat with her hands folded on the desk, gazing out onto the empty field. Why hadn't Susan told her about the 2 schools? She acted as if they would be in the same class. Hadn't she? She'd said they'd see each other every day. Had she meant only on the bus? At the outside lunch tables, Ivy sat by herself, looking onto what they called the playground, a weedy acre with a chain-link fence around it. There was no blacktop area painted with 4 square courts and hopscotches, no grass, no backstops for baseball and kickball. Beyond the playground was an egg farm. Chickens pecked and clucked beneath row upon row of elevated coops. Chicken feathers littered both properties. No wonder the boys at Lincoln, Maine sang Old MacDonald. Ivy pulled the harmonica from her pocket, hoping to play and remind herself she was someone. She blew a chord and felt a speck of determination, a tiny spark of courage, until the wind shifted. The smell from the egg farm made her stomach turn, and she thought she might gag. She put away the harmonica. All afternoon, Miss Carmelo reviewed English for those who didn't speak it well. Ivy thought she might fall asleep from boredom, but she answered every question correctly when she was called upon and finished the worksheets within minutes. At the end of the day, Miss Carmelo called Ivy to her desk. Dear, you speak English very well. I don't think you need this review every afternoon. No, Miss Carmelo, I was born in the United States. I speak English perfectly. Yes, I see that. I think you would be better served elsewhere. Relief flooded over Ivy, and she gushed. Thank you, Miss Carmelo. I knew there was a mistake and I was in the wrong place. Miss Carmelo nodded. How would you like to go down to the 3rd grade class and help with the younger children each afternoon? Miss Alapiso is in desperate need of a translator. Ivy frowned. A translator? I thought you were sending me to Lincoln, Maine. Oh, no, heavens, dear. That's just not possible. You would help teach the little ones English. You'd be a teacher's assistant. Would you like that? It seems redundant for you here. You could start tomorrow after lunch. Feeling her face redden, Ivy nodded and went back to her seat. She felt the tremble of angry tears trying to rise and push them down. She stared out the windows again, wondering about all the things she might be doing in the afternoons she went to Lincoln, Maine. All that she was missing. She didn't know what those things were, but she was sure they were far more interesting than helping in the 3rd grade class. After school, as Ivy walked from the building, someone handed her a Join the Orchestra flyer with information about the orientation meeting on Thursday. She stuffed it into her pocket. In line for the bus, she watched a young man ride on a bicycle pedaling fast. His white shirt sleeves were rolled up and his blue pants were tied at the ankles with string so as not to get caught in the spokes. He wore a blue cap with some sort of emblem, and a leather pouch was slung across his chest. If only she had a bicycle, she could ride to and from school so she wouldn't have to suffer the humiliation of the bus and hear the taunts of the Lincoln, Maine students. When she boarded, a small girl, maybe a kindergartner, sat next to her. Ivy didn't even try to save the spot for Susan. At Lincoln, Maine, the students filed on, holding the same flyers. Ivy caught Susan's worried eyes searching for her, but she just nodded to her seatmate and shrugged. The entire way home, Ivy stared out the window. Why hadn't someone, Susan, Mrs. Ward, Bertino, Guillermo, told Ivy or Mama or Papa about the 2 schools? Didn't they know things were different in other parts of California? Didn't they know this was humiliating? Again, she fought back tears. When Ivy walked down the aisle to get off the bus, Susan said, "Bye, Ivy. See you tomorrow." "Bye," she said, without meeting her eyes, too embarrassed to see Susan feeling sorry for her. She climbed down the steps to the road. She'd never been more grateful for a door closing behind her or the sound of the bus pulling away. The moment she saw Mama standing halfway down the drive, smiling with her arms open to welcome her home, all of Ivy's pent-up emotions brimmed, and she burst. Okay, now why are there two schools? And then your second question for today is compare and contrast Lincoln Main and Lincoln Annex. And this I want in the comments as a compound sentence. So start it like this. Lincoln Main has blank, 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 comma, but Lincoln Annex, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so don't forget your comma and don't forget your connecting word like but. So give me a compound sentence comparing the two groups, Lincoln Main and Lincoln Annex, according to what we read today and what we've seen are different about the two schools. Try to make your sentences different from what other people have written already. Okay, give me good complete sentences, capital letters, periods, and we'll see what happens after this.